with your phone.
All right, I guess we'll start this meeting of the Housing, Health, and Public Safety Committee. On the agenda tonight is discussion of the chronic nuisance ordinance and implementation of the same. We'll start with Safety Services Director Murphy to find out what he has gone over with the members so far and find out any updates that we have.
The entire group met last Monday or Tuesday at 1. Basically, it's field data has to come in from somebody. It's coming in through the departments. As was discussed, I think, a little bit last meeting, nothing we've had since then rises to any level of the nuisance ordinance. Now, I know the law director and assistant law director have questions, and they want some things changed. My understanding is if that happens, that makes the ordinance easier to work with. None of the departments represented here have anything that rises to the level. Maybe we did years ago, and speaking to the building department, and the last list I had of the old cops team, the majority of the entries were building. There were a few police. Chief has spoken to how they gather information and what the records management system can and can't do. I don't know a thing about the new one. I know we got a new RMS in. I can tell you that Kyle Bennett, the head of the 311 center, is working on a spreadsheet. We don't have anybody in my office Excel capable to create one. What was created is the fields are too short. So Kyle is working. I apologize, Kyle's not here. He's home with sick family due to COVID. He's working on that, and it'll be presented whenever he comes back. I mean, he has to stay home 5 days. So once that usable sheet gets done, then all departments will have something to put the data in. Right now, we don't. It would be everybody on a scratch sheet. But the data has to come from the departments to the center to be correlated to make any sense out of, it's like a slide rule. That 6-month window constantly moves, and yet things will fall off. Sometimes things will come on, but it's not fine-tuned from what it was when Dave Lewis ran it 10, 15 years ago. So police department seems to give you the, that's where the data's got to come from. The chief will work his best to get the data in, but if RMS cannot do it, record management system, and I'm not an expert on record management, but if the program isn't there, you don't get anything out of it. So,
have we looked into anything like Mr. Bonzo recommended last meeting that we had, looking into other softwares that would fit this?
Kyle said it's out there, but the price point was about $11,000. If we cannot get this third-party person, it's helping us to create our own, which we then can template for all departments. And then it's up to the departments to put the data in. Mm-hmm. So right now, that's as far as we got. We all met last Tuesday or Monday at 9 or 1 o'clock, and we were all in the same room. Mr. Gary?
Do we have a kind of an end date or kind of an estimate on timeline as far as when that will know for a fact if they're going to be able to do that or not?
As soon as Kyle comes back from sick leave.
Okay.
He would have it here tonight, but unfortunately, COVID's struck again.
Yeah.
So that's what I can enlighten the committee over, and it's tough. I know there's a lot of feelings. Oh, this ordinance is not being used, but you can't. You just can't put something there that's not there. Yeah. We went over Ellesmere Avenue last time, and there was a lady in council complaining, "Oh, it's terrible." None of it rose to the level of a crime or a nuisance, and surely we just don't want to go out and say it is, and that would be wrong.
Well, do we have, it's your meeting, Mr. Tracy, but do we have any recommendations on how we change? I guess that would probably come from Mr. Moore, I believe, is like, so to make some of these issues fall under this ordinance, do we have a suggestion on what changes we need to make?
Which situations do you want to fall into the ordinance?
Just in general, like some of these properties we have, and I have a couple gentlemen here that I don't know if they want to speak on some of their neighboring properties about them, as you asked to provide some addresses. So have a couple addresses, and I have some people here to speak on those properties. And I'm asking about these changes that we need to make to the ordinance, so that way it can be more effective, because it seems like a lot of these, we can't say we don't have nuisance properties, they're out there, but from what I'm gathering is this ordinance isn't really set up to catch them and do anything effective to fix them. That's what I'm kind of wondering, what changes we need to make to allow for some of these properties to fall into this ordinance.
It depends on the individual properties and which ones you want to fall under the ordinance and what has happened so far. There are some where there are nuisance conditions or things that are annoying to the neighbors, and the health department or the building department has gone out, written orders, talked to them, worked on it, but it's not been pushed to the point of, we're going to file a criminal complaint against them. We're going to take them into mayor's court. It hasn't happened. Now, if it's that kind of a situation, the question would be, well, why don't we follow the process we already have? If this is the thing, if the goal is, if we want hard enforcement of these things, then the question becomes, well, let's bring these into mayor's court. Now, there's one in particular that Mr. Gary was in court on it last week. The charges have been pending for 18 months, and hopefully there will be a trial soon. And there are some that are like unique circumstances like that. There are some
is that Crown?
That's Crown, yes,
Yeah, so that's
exactly.
one of the gentlemen I have here that is interested in that property and has been dealing with that, like you said, for a long time.
Right.
And yeah, that's I think,
And then there are some where, this is a problem, and Mr. Gary has contacted, for example, CMHA and said, hey, this is going on here, and they have pulled their public housing certification or voucher for that property. There are others where he's tried to get the state, the one on Ellesmere, to try to get the state to enforce the lead abatement laws, and they just haven't done it, and we've not been able to we're not allowed to file an action for that basis. So again, it depends on which properties and what's going on with those specific properties. If you want to make this ordinance do something beyond what we already have on the books.
yeah, and there's another gentleman here for a property on Mills Avenue next to him that, has had some severe issues throughout the last couple of years, even longer than that, I find it hard for me to talk to these residents and say, hey, there's nothing we can do. I just don't, that's silly to me. And what I think we're here to try to figure out, and I feel like we're choosing our words really carefully when we should just say, hey, we do have a problem. We don't want these kind of properties to become more frequent. So how can we more collectively stop that problem? I think that's kind of what I was expecting, and maybe if I was unclear on that, I apologize. For this meeting is, we have properties out here that are very troublesome, very nuisance to the neighbors. How do we fix these problems? Is it this ordinance making it stronger overall with, all right, these are some building department stuff we can add in. This is some health department issues we can add in, some police enforcement issues we can add in. I think that's what I was looking for.
Well, then again, the question is, what are the issues that aren't covered by this? Like, what are the kinds of offenses that aren't covered like this that should be included? Because it depends on the property, again.
And again, that's one of the reasons I asked the building department, because they've got better knowledge of that than I do. What their most frequent concerns throughout the city are. What do they write up the most? What do they see the most? Health department, I caught a couple things for the health department, but maybe there's something that's not in there that they can suggest. And police, maybe there's something in there I take out, maybe there's something we add, I don't know.
So I don't want to speak for the group, but we were all at this meeting, and we did, that was a question that was brought up, was you wanted us to come back with some ideas, and I can tell you, we were at a loss. We did not have any suggestions. And anybody can feel free to say different if I misunderstood, but that was part of the problem. We sat there, it was probably like an hour long, we talked about quite a few different things, but we didn't really have any suggestions.
So, Mr. Dracy, if I may. I guess just to me, it seems like, this entire system is broken. There is way too much work, in my opinion, just to get that Crown Avenue property cleaned up. you all have been to court so many times over this, and I guess I don't understand still, and I know I keep bringing it up every time, but it feels like other communities have kind of figured out the civil penalty stuff, and that they figured out that there are other ways to enforce property type things that are not just sending somebody to court. I mean, and I guess that's the thing I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around. I almost feel like we need to send like a fact-finding like envoy to Cincinnati, to Sharonville, wherever the places are that are like figuring this out and doing it, just so that we can understand what they're doing. And it's probably going to be a lot of work. There's probably going to be quite a few ordinances we'll need for this. There's probably going to be, the systems that we're going to have to get in place in the city to like process like civil penalties and stuff. But I truly believe that in the long run, I think it's going to be worth it. And and maybe I'm just completely off base and just don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the, what's going on in other cities. But it just feels like there's other cities that are kind of figuring this out. And I would love for Norwood to figure this out too. And I know you all are really busy and hardworking. I'm kind of at a loss myself too. I mean,
Do we know what, I mean, I have a call in Cincinnati's solicitor. I had a call in before the last meeting. I just got a call back today who referred me to somebody else. I left them a message. Their ordinance is somewhat similar to ours. I don't know if you guys have read it or not. Doesn't mention calls for service. But I have not heard back. But again, I just put that in today. But do you know what cities, I mean, I think as a group, as this task force, we're not completely put together yet, but we're happy to go visit with another city and find out what they're doing and how it's working for them.
so it's not about, their chronic nuisance ordinance is very similar to ours. I mean, I agree with you. I did read it. And so it's not necessarily about the CNO. I think the CNO is, I kind of think that's going to be, it sounds like that's probably not going to be our best bet moving forward. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's about more just, the litter. I mean, Cincinnati goes too far, I think, and Mr. Weigel here probably could confirm this as well, but they probably go a little bit too far at times. But it's just about, I mean, they'll give tickets for littering, right? Like, so if there's crap in your yard, and sometimes they'll give you a warning, sometimes they won't, but we should definitely be giving warnings. But they'll give civil fines, and you then can appeal it to their Office of Administrative Appeals. And I guess that's kind of how it works. If you don't pay it, then, whether it's goes on your taxes or whether it's a lien or what have you, but it kind of goes a more civil route. And, some of these ordinances I feel like could be, every day of violation every day could be a new violation, right? So not that once you finally settle, you may not get all of it, but I just feel like there's more pressure that we could put on some of these places than we're putting. And
that's where this ordinance came about, was to take 15 or 20 different ordinances that we have that each department may write and include it into one. So we're writing one citation, we've got an umbrella underneath 15 or 20 different ordinances that we can use. That was the hope for this ordinance, was to just make it a lot easier for the departments to write something out versus 5 or 6 different citations or 5 or 6 different runs between each other. That's a whole lot of paperwork.
If I may. We keep saying places. What are the places? The building department has its procedure and policy, the way they treat people. So you get, 15 days and then 30 days to clean up. Then if you don't, you get 15 more days. It's kind of like, and these are residents. They come to court, and it's totally Walt Worcester's discretion as to what happens here in court. And I know they anguish over the fact that sometimes they want the hammer down, and Walt will listen to the story. The court may, and they sometimes do, I'll give you 30 days. The Tilden Avenue situation, is that where Elena lives? Crown has been going on for a long time. She sued everybody and their brother, drug everybody through the bushes, to finally, of course, COVID shut down the property court. It's just now, if she petitioned the Supreme Court and been threatened to be fined, going to court next week. We mentioned the Lily Avenue property. Next to that nuisance property is a Cincinnati building inspector's residence. Mark Reeves knows him well. He was amazed that we dealt with that situation in less than 40 days. He said that wouldn't have happened in Cincinnati. It would have languished and languished and languished. They were out. From the day President of Council called me and I called Mark Reeves, we were on it. out in less than 40 days. So were they a nuisance? It was an illegal house. They're gone. Now, sometimes you would look at the ordinance, it's subjective. Is that a nuisance? If I lived next to it, allegedly there were 15 people in the house doing drugs or whatever, I would say, yeah, do something. Well, they got them out. I mean, it's just.
But that's not gonna breed for consistent enforcement. I mean, you're gonna have some residents, like, these people are gonna comply, oh crap, they're coming at me, we gotta get this done. Then you're gonna have some where they don't wanna do anything.
Ellesmere would be the closest one.
But I find it really hard that seems like just a better process than what we're trying to do here with the civil penalties. To me, it streamlines and it uniforms the enforcement, clear guidelines on what's gonna happen because it's great if we can go out there and send them letters and they get it fixed right away, but
Right.
in the real world that we're in, that's not the case all the time.
No.
It's great when we have that one,
But if they
but for that
don't-
one, we have like 10 over here that are telling us to go F off and don't want to listen, and they just want to take the process
I don't know
out.
how many people the building department run into that do that. We have the guy on Ellesmere, and as it stated, that's a state problem.
Well, I'm not talking just the building department.
I
I mean, I've worked at Jim Shelby in the health department,
Well, then
checking
same
some
with health.
properties out as well.
But
You know, I'm
they
sure-
have to rise to
I'm
the
sure Chief
level.
Kramer has properties that he knows of where they're constantly getting in trouble and getting the cops called there. So it's like, in this ordinance, yeah, maybe it's not worded correctly or has the right things in it to be useful. What we need to figure out is, all right, what things, we see where you guys are going and we're the department heads, here's how we do make this ordinance useful and more powerful for us, so we can have a clear, consistent enforcement level on this thing. I think currently our system is broken. I think it's great that we're able to get some of these properties taken care of in 30 days, 40 days, but we have a lot of properties that they don't care. And that's how we need to find a way to get to those properties and get those
Citizens
taken care of.
would call the department involved first. Call the building department, they go out. Call the health department, they go out. If it's a collation of all that facts that come together and we're not collating it, well, that's what if the RMS can't do that, then it has to be done manually. People need to call us. If anybody listening or in this room feels they have a nuisance property that rises to the level of the ordinance, please call that department
So,
and we'll get on it.
so somebody calls the building department, they give them 30 days. Somebody calls the health department, they give them,
Well, they're different.
is it 10 days for grass?
Yes.
They give them 10 days for grass. And then the grass still isn't cut, they go back out, they give them what, another 5?
They give them a second notice.
So
And
another
then-
10
and then a
days.
Final notice.
So then that's 20 days, and then the final notice is another 30 days. By that point, they're at 30 days, they've got a citation, we've got 2 separate citations through 2 separate departments.
We have two different, we don't write the same things up.
I understand that.
But there's still
So-
occurrences.
But
Yeah.
if you've got 30 days that you're putting somebody on for something, and they end up having 30 days on something, just because it's a 10-day first notice, you're still going to end up with 30 days, am I right? Three notices is 30 days? So you still end up with a 30 days. So you may write something up for 30 days, his grass may end up going 30 days. Now we're at 30 days, and we've got two tickets, or 2 citations, or 2 write-ups, or whatever you guys call it.
But that's actually the question, Mr. Tracy. I think you're making a good point in the sense that are those, Mr. Moore, are the orders to cut grass or the orders that the building department sends, is that enough to hit the CNO right now, the chronic nuisance ordinance? Or do they have to get convicted, go to court and get convicted of not cutting the grass?
I think you could do it, and it's not defined in the ordinance.
And that's one of the things.
It would
I
be,
wanted to
now,
come
you
up
could define it that way. And I think for things like building department orders, building code violation, and just so you know, a building code violation is, a lot of them are like first-degree misdemeanors. They carry jail time, and every day is a separate violation. So in theory, if you cite them, and it takes them, 30 days, they could do like years in jail. but nobody wants to put somebody in jail for years because the gutters are falling apart. I
Well,
mean,
no-
that's what's
Nobody
already.
also wants to live next to a
I'm just
house that's
saying,
falling apart and
that's
has
what's already,
animals living in it.
I'm saying,
either.
that's what's already on the books. Most of these are every day is a separate violation, it counts as a separate violation. So,
How often have we ever
but the
done that?
question is, yes, the way this is written, and we could tighten up the language to say, again, if that's what the committee wants, which is fine, that for those kinds of violations, yes. If you're going to get to drug dealing, that's not going to work. That, oh, we had a call, that's the kind of thing that there's a lot more due process that's going to be involved in something like that. But I would say for, the building code violation, for the tall grass and weeds, yeah, I think if you write the orders, then that would be sufficient.
We did, at our meeting, we talked, and Keith wasn't there, but Tim was. I mean, Tim did say he would feel much more comfortable having a conviction as opposed to just a citation. But we also brought up, I mean, it could take, this is a 6-month time window. It could take 6 months to get a conviction, even on the misdemeanor. Courts are running slow, particularly slow right now, but even when they're running normal, it can take a while. So those are all things that, I think we need to think about.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Well, and there's no
misdemeanors that take
guarantee
a
that
year.
if you go to court, you're gonna get convicted of it, even if the instance still happened, you're still a nuisance. Just because you didn't get a conviction on it, doesn't mean that an occurrence still didn't happen.
I think that's problematic. I mean, if we were to cite somebody for a felony drug abuse and use this ordinance, and then they were not convicted, I think they would be found not guilty.
Well, in the ordinance, it's a felony drug conviction.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's there, because that's one of those things, that, like, we've talked about that, where that could be problematic. But if you're outside fighting, or you're outside visibly dealing drugs, you get picked up, boom, that's an occurrence per this. But even though you might have a good lawyer, you go to court and you're found not guilty, that's, neither here nor there.
I think when I was looking at some of this, I was thinking of mayor's court. Let's say you guys get a call for a loud stereo from a vehicle at a building. Officers go up, they hear it, they tell them to turn it down. Okay, they turn it down. All of a sudden, an hour later, they get another call. Same car, same radio, up loud. They go in, they give them another warning. They write it up, hey, verbal warning. They go back a third time. Now they've got a citation, they come to court, right? So court date comes. Officers are busy with another court case, maybe downtown that might be something bigger. Don't show up for court, and the magistrate goes, oh, the officer's not here. I'll go ahead and dismiss this, right?
That's not what
It
happens,
happens.
but I get the point.
But it happens. It happens. There's times that officers don't show up. There were times I didn't show up because I had other things going on. It happens.
There are rare
But
times, yeah.
if it happens and it gets dismissed through mayor's court, that's not a conviction, but it's not to say that it didn't happen 3 times, because now we have records to show that it happened 3 times. If that makes sense. We've got, a professional who was out there, who visibly saw it, heard the audible sound, wrote it down, and can come to an appeals court and say, yes, when I showed up, or the appeals board, and say, yes, when I showed up, we showed up 3 times, told them to turn it down, they didn't turn it down. That was 3 different incidents right there. So if that makes a little more sense as to why I was looking for the call for service, kind of compounds on you. I know I spoke a lot on that one, but that's kind of where I was trying to go with that, was we don't always get a conviction on things that are physically seen or heard. And that's where I was trying to go with the call for service. Now, obviously, for the building department, the health department, we'll have to come up with a definition of call for service. We can use call for service for the police department, obviously, but maybe we figure out what that equivalent would
Per
be.
notice. If
for
they do a first notice,
those two.
second notice, final notice, we can add those in, and include those. Is I think where you're getting at.
Right.
Yeah, and I like that. Because I feel like part of this issue, and part of why we're still here, and I feel like we're just treading water here almost, is, to me, I'm just not sure that everybody here is on the same page or on the same level of desire to enforce this. You know, I mean, I think that's a problem. And however we can get there, you know, I want to go down that road. Because, like I said, there are these properties, and there's some that we're very good at handling. There's some that, even like Mr. Shelby, I've been working on, that are still not even handled. And we're unsure when it's going to be handled. And if we can all get on the same page and say, we do have a problem, we do need to step up our enforcement, and instead of being a little bit more lenient, saying, hey, this is your notice, get it done, this is your notice, get it done, and then we're going to mayor's court, we're going to go through the process, instead of giving everybody a break. You know, there's some people like, you know, things like the cop shows up and it's a loud music thing, like Mr. Tracy said, where there could be the possibility to get a warning. It's discretionary, I get it, but when we have the ordinances in place that we do, and you're outside of them, you know, let's enforce it to the T of the ordinance is what I'm trying to get to. And again, hoping that we had some of these changes that we could add in to make this a, you know, more, you know, strengthened ordinance that we can easily enforce. And I know it's going to probably be a lot more work for each department. I know that. But if we want to make a better standard of living here in Norwood for all of our properties, of saying, hey, this is what we expect, all right? And it's not like an HOA kind of thing where it's all these strict, stupid rules. It's basic being a basic quality neighbor, you know, not having a bunch of trash around your house or your house falling in, not dealing drugs at your house or fighting outside your house all the time. That's what we're looking for here. And I just don't see why we're so far apart on enforcing this thing. I think, you know, we should be able to narrow this thing down pretty clearly and have something of quality. I mean, you know, obviously I have Mr. Brinkmeyer back here. I think he wants to say something, and he's got some, you know, he thinks that we don't have a problem. I think he said, you know, he's nodding his head back there, but we do have a problem. I got a couple residents over here right now to tell you how much of a problem we have. You know, and I got a handful more that couldn't be here tonight that I would love for them to tell you how much of a problem we have.
I think we all agree we have two problems that are wrong. You got to strengthen the ordinance, and we need to come up with some way to everybody record what they deem a nuisance. I don't ride with these guys. I don't go with Brian's people. And collate that so we know what each department's doing.
Well, and again, that's what we asked last week.
And
Yeah.
Did we?
Kyle is all
I think
sick tonight.
that's completely separate from what you just said. You said we need to compile what
Right,
these
and
guys
that's what Kyle's working
think
on.
are nuisances.
Right.
However, your definition of nuisances are right here in this ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
We asked to come back and, like the building department, what are your most, what do you most write in this city? Health department, what do you most write, or what would you like to see in this? That's what we asked to do. And that's what we thought we were coming in today to do, was say, okay, we've got some ideas from the building department of what to add to this to help them out. Okay, we've got some ideas from the health department, what to add or take out to make this better.
I think that's
I mean-
pretty much through the law department, because we're not lawyers, but we need the data. If these residents, hearing or here,
But-
have called in a property, I would venture to say, with
These-
my 27 years in the police department, we can't respond to things we don't know about.
These gentlemen have been doing this, well, not Mr. Williamson, but these two here have been doing it for years, and they know what they write up.
But if nothing has risen to the level of the ordinance,
But I don't have anything for the building department. That's why I needed their help to find out what to put
Anything you
in.
can do, if we go back to,
Good Lord.
Let's be respectful to
I'm listening.
the guests.
I'm listening.
if you go back to this, now, a lot of times we get complaints. A lot of times it's the tenant in the thing, okay? But if we go back and it's the same thing with the owner, that's maybe something we, you know, with the owner doing that way. But I can't tell you what we write up the most is leaking, you know, outlets not working.
I mean, is it chip paint on the outside of the
Well, we
houses?
write that up on the property
it-
maintenance stuff.
I
you know.
mean, that's the
But
stuff
that's
that,
not, to me, you gotta, you know, that's, you walk around, you give them, and you know how many times we hear now, well, we had the flood, we had the COVID and all that, and we work with people and that, and all that. Long as they're doing something and keep us posted, I got a contract, I'm getting this site, send me the contract. We staple it to the book and that. So, but to say what we write up to, you don't know what you're gonna write up when you go into a place. And like a lot of times, the person's getting evicted, and now finally, they've been living like that for a year or so, and that. We go in there, we write it up, and send it to the owner.
So, Mr. Dracy, if I could ask a question. I mean, so with the building department, are you all able to, right now, are you able to run a report and look at how many times somebody has been written up, or how many times across the city we've written people up for chipped paint in the past year? Like, do you have any way to do that without actually going through each individual file and searching a file to see if there's a chip paint?
I gotta check with Carrie on that to see on that.
But probably not. I mean, so, yeah, I appreciate it. So, but that's like part of the issue is that there's not the data that we can know. Like, I mean, we're kind of asking you subjectively, what's the things that you write up the most, right? But just overall, the whole city, other than going and pulling the file of the individual property, there's not any good data at the city to see how many times we're using. The police department has it, and the fire department has it, but.
But we can't flag, like, I would love if I could put in my CAD system for if we get 3 runs in 6 months to a certain address to bring that in, but it won't. I would have to know what that address is. Ideally, if we could find some kind of system where our CAD could dump into it, and it might be dream, I don't know if it's even possible, and that they could enter their stuff, and then it would bring up if we're dealing with the same property, that would be ideal.
But you could, but your CAD system, can you export it to Excel where you get 1 line per violation or 1 line per whatever the
We
the
should
record
be
type
able
is?
to export it to an Excel, yes.
So that's the kind of thing, like, we don't have, in the building and health departments, we don't have anything like that where we can build something and put it together. I mean, it's gonna be it's a lot of manual work.
And I understand that we can't go back in the past, okay? That's why a year ago when this was put in, I was hoping that the person in charge would step up and have said, okay, let's start figuring this out. Let's start keeping track of these. Essentially right now, a year from this being voted in, we're starting from scratch here. And all we can do now is look at this and go, okay, everybody get familiar with your portion of this, and let's start keeping track. Let's see where we're at. Just like Chief Kramer did with Ellesmere, he came in and literally sat there and said, there was nothing that met any of this at that property. Resolved everything that we had as far as going back and forth about nobody doing anything about this property. As far as the police department side, there was nothing, right? Health department, I don't know. I saw several things there that I subjectively would have said they would have cited me for it. So I would assume that they would have cited them for it. There are a few things that I thought the building department probably would have said, yep, I definitely sent a letter to that on that house there. There were definitely things there, okay? Chief Kramer basically came back and said, there's nothing there. Great, awesome. He went back, he did the work. Fantastic, okay? So essentially what I'm looking to do is, instead of making excuses on trying to get rid of the ordinance because somebody doesn't want to do it, let's figure out how to use it. Again, I built a spreadsheet, how many months ago? 6 months ago? When I tried to have this big meeting 6 months ago, showed it, kind of got blown to the side a little bit. I've done a lot on this outside of what I should have done, and I've tried to help out where I could. Now all of a sudden we're going back to the spreadsheet that I suggested 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I may, I'll just say, I mean, I don't think anybody here questions the amount of time that you've worked on this, and I think I think in the chronic nuisance ordinance, I mean, I know that you spent a lot of time on it, and I still think it's going to be a tool in our belt. I just don't think that's going to be the only tool in our belt, and that's why even to get to the point where it's going to be as useful as I hope it will be. We still got to quantify the numbers, and I still don't know if a spreadsheet is going to be the long-term solution. I mean, I know that I know that you're not suggesting that it has to be, and you're open to other ideas, but
It may not be, but it's a start.
and especially especially a council member doing a spreadsheet. I mean, we'll come and go, but we really want to see processes that continue on, you know.
It's a start, that's the thing.
Oh,
is
I'm
We have
not-
to start somewhere.
I'm not saying it's not a start, I'm just saying I think we've got to work on we've got to work on the record management system as well, or I don't think this is ever really going to be, it's going to be too much manual work for it to be useful. And then back to the civil penalties thing, I mean, I think you, Mr. Kramer, Chief Kramer, you said that, you know, you got some calls in with Cincinnati. I mean, feel free if you ever want to include me on those. You're totally your discretion, but there could be some language I could talk just based on a little bit of experience there, maybe. But yeah, I'm gonna be happy to help anyway there.
Yeah, I mean, if we can, I always like to not reinvent the wheel, and if we can find out how somebody else is doing it, I mean, like I said, I think your idea was good. I mean, as far as looking at, and I think you guys did a little bit look at other cities, and you kind of, but to see how they actually implement it. I mean, we can still move forward with what we're doing, but also look and see if there's, you know, a better way.
Yeah, most of the other cities that I've looked into, it's all through one person.
Okay.
One person goes out, and that's their entire job. They go out and they look to see if any properties or any complaints actually fit into their nuisance ordinance. Middletown, they'll send it out. If they get a complaint, they'll see if it fits into any of the ordinances. I think having a task force is something completely different. Having an appeals board is completely different, that are full of citizens. It's something that we're trying that nobody else is doing. And I get not reinventing the wheel, but we also need to look to set a standard just like these other cities have done by using something like this, because they've set a standard by using something like this that other cities are using. So why not be that standard?
So, well, Mr. Racy, I just want to also point out too, so, I mean, I would actually wonder if we could, when we talk to, or when, you know, whoever talks to the city of Cincinnati about what they have both the civil penalties for various violations and they have a chronic nuisance ordinance. And so I would suspect that probably 95% of what gets written up or 95% of the activity they do is not the chronic nuisance ordinance, it's those civil penalties that kind of, you know, keep things moving. And then the chronic nuisance ordinance gets the worst of the worst. And we have a couple of those worst of the worst, I think, here in Norwood that would hit that too. I'm just saying, I really think it's not just, I mean, I think we can get upset. It's not going to change all that much with the CNO. I think there's just that parallel path that's important just as much.
Well, in all fairness, the CNOs, what we got set up is what's going to get us to that civil penalty process.
I think it
Place
started.
defined.
Oh.
So, but what it seems like to me is we need, and what we kind of hoped for was we don't have much for the health department, building department. Correct me if I'm wrong at any time. Is what we were wanting was for you guys to look at your areas and say, hey, these are some of our big hitter things that we get called out to go inspect, we get called out for. We should probably include these in there. So we're building our list of definitions that we worked out with Mr. Moore of what is a nuisance. We're not just saying, oh, you're a nuisance. There's clearly listed items that are nuisance activities in this ordinance. So what I think, because I have a feeling that there's some like adversarial kind of tension going on here between, you know, us and you guys, and I don't like that. I mean, I think we're allies here. We're on the same team here. We're teammates. We want to make this thing work. So what I think it might have got miscommunicated or misconstrued. We wanted you guys to kind of bring us some things that we don't have in this for your areas, so we can add in those definitions so they now fall in this, and there's some things that kind of would then qualify for the CNO, which would trigger some civil penalties. And once we get those definitions, once we get those citations or whatever you guys call the notices and all that stuff, I think that's kind of what we were really hoping for. But I really don't want this to be adversarial. I don't want it to be that, oh, we're trying to make you guys work more, or we're not happy with the work you're doing already. What we're thinking is just what we have currently isn't enough. It's broken, and we need to build it and strengthen it better. Not necessarily recreating the wheel, but bringing in a bigger, better wheel is what I think we're really wanting to do.
And I wasn't looking for anybody to work harder. I was looking for it to be easier on you,
Yeah.
on departments. Instead of you guys writing your own stuff up, you can include it in here and write it up through here. So if we've got 3 violations from the building department, 2 from the health department, and 2 from the police department, that's 7 violations right there that fit into this nuisance ordinance. I mean, if you look at, that fits into 1.5 of the definitions up here, so it would be fit under the single family, and we'd already be at halfway through for the 2 to 9 unit families. So, or 2 to 9 units. So something like that, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, is to make it easier for you guys. Not make it harder. That's not what I'm trying to do. Or that's not what Chris wanted to do. We wanted to make this easier for you. Under one, placing a lot of these under one umbrella. Make it easy. It's very,
Yeah, quick, Matt, part of what's easy, I was a policeman 27 and a half years. Many people don't want to get involved. Now, if we have residents here and listening that think they have a nuisance property, call it in to the department that services that. If nobody calls us, I believe Larry and Hoggy, when they do their streets, they do by blocks. They were walking South Norwood the other day, but they only do that certain months, and they write up things. But there are things that they can't see, and we've got an issue with, well, you can't see it because I won't let you on my property to see it. If the ordinance is totally tweaked and brought back, and Mr. Moore and Mr. Gary say, this is correct, this will work, then it's a matter of the citizens calling and us having a system. And I can tell you, if it costs $12,000, unless it's brought to council for special, Mr. Sith's going to say it's not in the FRP, not this year, put it in next year. But that, they just don't, they don't have a way to talk to one another. They did it before because Dave Lewis, the one person Mr. Bonsall spoke of.
That's why we want to get that task force together, where
force.
they do sit in front of each other and they talk to each other and they talk
It
about
doesn't
these
have
properties.
to be the heads. It doesn't have to be Chief Kramer. It doesn't have to be Mr. Roble. It doesn't have to be Mr. Williamson. They can put anybody in that position that they feel can best fit in that position. It doesn't have to be them. That's why the task force was created, for communication.
And that person was Dave Lewis before, and right now he's not available. So if there is somebody
if Dave
that
Lewis,
has the computer that can do it, and that's what Kyle's working on.
and that's where the person that runs the task force, the safety service director, comes into play and says, okay, let me get this task force together. Chief Kramer, who do you want involved with this task force? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be another officer? Is there somebody that wants to do it? Do we need to hire an auxiliary to take this over and let them go through these runs and figure out, what we're going to
want an auxiliary doing that. We have a hard time keep hiring 2 more, and right now we have 1 of 2.
Okay, but I'm giving examples here, okay? So then Mr. Roble, whoever's going to run the building department, I don't know who's doing it, between the, three of you, I think, right?
3 of us.
Whoever the building department says, okay, you're going to take this on. Each time something comes in, if it fits into this ordinance, we're going to throw it into that spreadsheet. Somebody at the health department, it doesn't have to be Mr. Williamson. It can be anybody within all these say their designee. Just like you, it doesn't have to be you. It could be somebody within your realm of
I have Sharon.
underling.
She's busy enough. But it is still, the citizens are the key, whether it's police run or anything, and then they got to get involved. If they don't call it in, it's up to his time with he and Larry when they go, whatever month it is for A block, and then the rest of the city languishes.
When Chris and I started this in February of 2020 and started discussing this, we had already gotten so many calls about so many properties. And they had called the building department, called the health department. So, when they make these calls, they may call them and they may show up, but let's help strengthen their job a little bit while using this. We understand. We all preach, call the departments. We all preach it.
Well,
I know Mr. Bonzo does.
There are times that they call their councilman, and then they relay the second party information. I get that. That's a way to do it. But do we hear, there's people that have nuisances. Call it in. Maybe it's already on their books. I don't know.
I'm not saying that people aren't not calling it. I'm sure they do. I'm sure you guys get out there and do a good job. But there's a lot of properties I've personally been involved with that they're just not getting done. And then what
Question
happens?
is, Chris, do
Like,
they rise to
I've
the
spoken to
nuisance?
Mr. Rowe about the apartment building on the corner of Carter and Sherman before, and we've talked about, he said, all the owners talking about painting it. It's been half painted for probably 2 years. You know, what's going on with it? Like, that's the things, stuff like that is what people's talking about. Yeah, I know we want to work with people. Yeah, I know we're not trying to jam people up, but sometimes people need, it's not jamming them up when you're blatantly doing wrong, you know, it's like,
If they call it in and they apply the rules of the day, what they do for that type of situation. I don't know that if it's paint, okay, you paint your building, that's a nuisance. It's ugly.
well, I'm
get
sorry,
that.
I'm sorry if this sounds disrespectful to anybody here that's a department head, but the fact that we have residents out here that are complaining this heavily about it, that have called in, some of them probably more than others, some of them maybe haven't yet, and the fact that we have landlords, property owners, all that, business owners that aren't fixing their stuff, I'm sorry to tell you, but that means they're not scared of whatever it is you're doing. They're
Well,
just not scared of it.
maybe they didn't call it in and they told you they did. They would keep track.
That's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing the
I know.
fact that whatever we are doing currently is useless in the eyes of a lot of these people out here.
Well, if they would call it in, I still
It's not
think
working.
there's a lot of people that want to fuss about it, but don't call it in as a complaint, to let them go do their job.
How do you know they don't call them in?
I'm
People
telling
call,
you,
we go out. We
I
answer all
guarantee
the
you,
calls.
Brian, oh yeah, okay, sure, it's Mrs. Smith again, and hang the phone up.
So this is, I mean, this whole thing is, there's a huge issue with information not getting
Yes,
passed
there
on.
is.
So
Yeah.
whether it's information, you know, from residents and with the C-click fix, hopefully that's going to be improved. Or whether it's information about what's actually being done. I mean, there's no portal, like, ideally, somebody should be able to go online and put an address in and see the orders that have been written up, see the letters that have been sent to a specific property. Like, there should be more transparency so that residents can know that, oh, look, they have been trying. Because right now, I do agree with Mr. Kelch that residents are frustrated, that it does seem like at times that there's not things getting done, but I'm sure that there's many people that are also, I'm sure there's letters getting written, things getting fixed, but people don't consider that because that's not the issue right in front of them. That's why I'm, like, we've got to figure out a way to get more information.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is not that, oh, you guys aren't doing your jobs. You guys are doing your jobs every day. You guys work hard. But what I'm saying is that job, that effort is being almost for naught because there's not enough oomph behind it. And with these civil penalties in this ordinance, if we can get a much broader set of definitions where there's more things added into it from the building department, health department, now we have more things that fall in this ordinance. Now, when you guys go out and give them that notice, that first notice, that second notice, that final notice, I mean, they're understanding this is going towards you on the nuisance property ordinance. And that might come with a civil fine and penalty. I mean, that is just a little bit of
I agree.
added
We
incentive.
all agree to that, but
So then how do we get to that point is what I'm saying, because I feel like we're going nowhere fast here. And I'm feeling like we need maybe to have another meeting to where we can expect some of those definitions to be brought in.
And see, I don't want to have another meeting. I was
Me
hoping
either.
to do a lot of this
But-
tonight because, again, like, let's start from the beginning. Starts from scratch because we keep seeming to circle
Yeah.
the horse, or yeah, that. The definitions. Mr. Moore had said one felony drug offense, or two felony drug offenses seemed pretty high,
Yeah.
right?
What do you mean? For
Last
the-
meeting, we had discussed the two felony drug offenses, possibly changing that to one.
Well, that's the question. It's like, what do you want? Again, we're getting back to what do you want the ordinance to be? If you want the ordinance to be a way to issue civil fines for violations, period, that's a different ordinance than this property is really a problem, and so we're going to notify them. If you do it again, we're going to tack this extra thing on above and beyond the penalties for the rules you're breaking in the first place. That's a chronic nuisance ordinance. If the idea is we want to do civil fines, that's a separate structure. Cincinnati does the civil fines. Cincinnati also has a whole administrative appeal process. And if we have a chronic nuisance appeal board and we're going to do every building and health code violation as a civil fine, as opposed to a cite to mayor's court, that chronic nuisance board is going to be busy.
It may be a different structure.
So I'm saying, but that's the point. If the idea is we're going to use this as the main enforcement tool, then there's, I don't even know where to start on what you
Well,
want to do
I
with
think
that.
with that, what you're saying is you're getting fined for every instance, every occurrence that happens, you got chipping paint once, you're getting a fine.
Not necessarily, you can get warnings, but like, eventually it might lead to that you're gonna get, like, that building there, you're gonna have a civil fine. After the third letter that they don't do anything, then you're getting a civil fine. If you don't respond to it, then you're gonna be presumed guilty. I mean, it's not a criminal thing. The criminal is so much higher that you have to prove.
When you say about building and health code violations, proving a case is easy. They bring
Well,
in,
sorry.
that the health inspector brings in a picture of the grass with a ruler. Oh, look, that's 14 inches tall. That's a violation. That's easy to prove. The building department brings in pictures of, you see the gutter is hanging down. This is the date, this is June 1st when I first sent the notice, and this is July 1st when they still hadn't done anything, and this is September 1st and it still hasn't been fixed. That's easy to prove. That's not the problem in that kind of a case. That's not really, that's not it. The question is how much time do you want to give an owner to take care of an issue
And that's-
that's been resolved?
and
And
that's
that's a
kind of-
policy question, is a big part of it.
That's kind of what I was hoping to discuss tonight when I asked the departments to bring in certain aspects of this meeting. And it seems like we might have one, maybe two, I'll give a little bit for you, Mr. Moore, that are prepared, because I haven't heard much from Mr. Williamson. I've heard a little bit from Mr. Roble. But between Chief Kramer and yourself, that's it. I haven't heard a whole lot. From the meeting that we discussed when Chief Kramer said last meeting, let us get together, let us talk about it, let us figure out what we can put in here, what we need to take out, what's pointless, what's, whatever he said. He said, let us get together, let us have 2 weeks to decide how to make this better. And we're sitting here talking about the same thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago. The same thing. I expected to come in here and say, okay, Mr. Moore, do we have a way to define a call for service for the building department, a call for service for the health department? What are we going to say? What are we going to call that? Are we going to say 3 notices is 1 violation on this? Are we going to say 1 notice for grass is now a violation for this? Are the green slips, are we going to say in a definition, green slip is a call for service for the health department? Are we going to say a written warning or a write-up for a house? Is that going to be a call for service for the building department? I wanted you to come in and maybe say, hey, look, you know what? We're a bit high on these numbers. And I get it. We can't go back through all these departments and look at where we're at in numbers. We started out low, and the residents wanted high, and we came to try and meet in that middle portion on these numbers. So if we're looking at these numbers, and you feel that 10-plus units with 15 or more nuisance activities is too high, where do we go? What do you feel is a good number? Because I think we started out with 8 on that one. A resident and a property owner wanted 17 or 18 on it, and we finally agreed to 15. So these are the things that I wanted to come in here today and discuss, is to go over what we need to change to help. I mean, I don't want this to go to waste. I want it to be used. I want it to be used for its intent that it is. And Chief Kramer has absolutely, he's hit that ball over the wall so far with the last 2 meetings so far. I mean, I don't know how else to ask, and I don't want to have another meeting, but we're going to have another meeting.
You want to get, hey,
Mr. Brinkmeyer's been wanting to speak for quite some time.
can you go up to the microphone? No, there-
Just a couple comments. I work for the building department, for you don't know. I'm feeling that, especially used to, feel that this city is full of blight and crime. It's not. This city is not full of blight and crime, okay? And you say that the citizens, they want to lay up here. Well, we get calls every day. You're too tough on me. Why'd you do this? Okay? We work with everybody. Am I supposed to bring a 90-year-old lady into court who can't fix her gutter because she doesn't have the money or the means to do it? Am I supposed to bring a man in here that's dying of cancer because he couldn't paint his front porch? Every incident is different. We work with people. You get more with honey than you do vinegar. I'm sure you've heard that, okay? Every property is different. I got 2 on Forest. I can't find a person who owns it. They said that she died 8 years ago and there's no kin. What are we supposed to do?
Well, then you go through the court system at that point. You notify the law department goes through the court system.
Okay? You make it sound like it's so simple. It's not that simple. But anyway,
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to say, I'm going to finish up here. I don't think this is the type of meeting to get what you guys want. We need to sit down civilly around the table, because when you say a nuisance, if I write up a gutter hanging off, is that a definition of nuisance? We don't know that. We've talked about it. Well, what's a nuisance?
That's what we're trying to talk about,
That's
trying to say,
simple.
should
that
that
a
be
nuisance?
classified as a nuisance or not? That's what we're trying to do.
That's what we've tried to do the last 2 meetings.
This type of setting in a committee meeting, you gotta sit down at a table, you guys gotta show up, and we gotta discuss what you want, what we want, and put it together.
Okay,
Well, we're operating a city committee here. We can't just, trust me, I mean, if you want to go get a round table and a 12-pack of some Bud Light
I
or
think
something,
that
we can
would
sit
work.
down. But we
Chris,
can't with
I
the
think
open
that
meeting
would
laws.
work.
Correct.
Mr.
The
Brinkmeyer. We
problem
can't
is
do
that we
that.
cannot, Mr. Brinkmeyer, we cannot have a meeting with 4 council members without having it as an open
It
meeting.
doesn't have to be the four
I
of
think a
us. It could be,
sit-down
it could be you
meeting,
two, it could be
more
just
than a
you.
committee meeting like this, I think would be much more productive.
Okay, well, I
You guys
tried that a
talk,
year
you
ago.
Come to a meeting,
So I tried that a year ago.
okay,
I got no response from the building department.
okay,
Nothing,
okay.
okay? Obviously, Mr. Williamson wasn't here, and Mr. Perino was in charge of Mr. Perino was great in communication, loved it. We just
don't
couldn't
know what you
hook up
guys-
on the same
We
days.
don't know what you guys want us to define as a nuisance.
That's
We don't know what you want.
That's
We
what
don't
I
know what you
wanted to
want.
discuss with you.
Yeah, we write up peeling paint, we write up hanging gutters, we write up broken steps, we write up garbage, trash, and debris, we write up junk cars. Are those nuisance? Is that a nuisance?
I've got junk cars in this nuisance ordinance. Yes,
Are
I
those
believe
nuisance?
a junk car would be a nuisance.
Okay. Well, how can we write it? It's gone in 10 days.
Then
Is that?
They abated the
And
problem.
they abated the
is that
problem.
property- Is that property a,
They abated
They
the
abated
problem.
the problem.
They abated the
Comes off.
problem,
is
yeah.
that a bad property?
They abated the problem and it comes off. If you have you read through this ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so it states,
7 of the 11 are police, and the last 4 are,
correct, because I didn't know what the building department wanted to put in there. I have tried multiple times to talk to somebody about it.
Who did
And-
you talk to?
I've talked to Carrie a few times to try and
You
get
don't
somebody
talk to
together.
Terry.
Aries
You
is
talk to Mike, me,
secretary.
or Mark.
No, I get that. But I have to figure out, when I call the building department and Carrie's like, they're all out,
I got a
I
question.
can't do anything.
I don't know if you ever calling the building department. I asked you one day to call the building department when your neighbor cussed me out. You were standing right next to me, and I said, "Hey, Matt, how about calling me about this guy?" That's 2 years ago. I still haven't heard from you.
I absolutely did call. I absolutely did.
Who'd you talk to?
And actually, I called twice on the house across the
Okay.
street from me for
How
you
many times
guys.
have you been in the building department?
Several. Because
I've
I had to
never
get
seen
one for
you
my
in there.
fence.
Chris comes in.
I had to
talked
get,
Chris
I had to
many
get
times.
one for my, I had to get a permit
talked
for my
to Chris
fence.
many
I
Let's,
had-
let's,
Calm down.
let's go.
Listen, Mr. Brinkmeyer, if I can, if I can.
One last thing. If so many people are calling you on complaints and everything, how come our phones would be ringing off the hook all day with complaints? But they're not ringing off the hook. We get complaints, yes. But if they're getting all the complaints that you guys are saying you're getting, our phones would not stop ringing.
If I may.
Okay.
I don't think at all this city is filled with blight and crime. I don't think it's near
Sounds like
Gotham
it sounds
City.
it that way.
However,
Yeah.
There's a fair amount.
there are some
I
residents,
disagree with you.
there's plenty of residents that have these problems and have these issues
And
that
they get
are
taken
calling
care
us.
of.
And some of them, probably much like this gentleman back here, has gotten tired of calling you guys or calling the health department and nothing's getting done. I'm not saying you guys aren't doing your job well.
What address would he be calling about?
1848 Mills.
Yeah.
I live at 1846. I've
We've
been there
never
for-
got a phone call about
Oh,
it.
that's a lie, because I have called you myself.
Friday, from him. He's never called.
I called months ago. I got communications with this man here, and I've called.
I've never talked to anybody
If I
about
may,
the building
1848
department
or Mike
quite a few
Norwood.
times, Mr. Brinkmeyer, so I hate to say it, but that's a lie. However,
one
I
other
don't
thing.
think the city's filled with, you've said that a couple times,
Yeah.
it's my turn.
Okay.
There's quite a few residents, just like this gentleman here and this gentleman back here, that are sick and tired of calling in and nothing seems to get done, there's nothing explained. What we're
Let me
trying
ask
to
you
do
a
here,
question.
what we're trying to do here is a streamlined process with a little bit more incentive, so when you guys do your job, it's
It
much
helps.
more streamlined, it's
Okay.
organized, and they have a clear-cut incentive to not get fined to get it done.
And one
If there
last
are
thing.
some things, and that was a great point you said, of, am I supposed to bring an 80-year-old woman or somebody dying?
Exactly.
Great. Those are really, 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 really good things that we need to know, that maybe we can work things in here to say, how do we help those people that are trying, that just doesn't have the means or the resources to get it done? How do we help them?
One last
While
thing.
also holding the other people accountable who choose not to follow the rules.
One last thing. I'm gonna piggyback on what the safety reserve director said. When they call you, you should say, you need to call that department, you need to call that department, or you need to call that department.
I've done that several times.
I've done that
Okay.
several times myself.
All right, and we probably got those calls. I guess we got those calls from whoever you told us to. But it's not like, our phones are ringing off the hook every day with complaints. They're
I mean,
not.
well,
That
and-
means our city's doing pretty damn good.
And I understand that, but there's obviously things, there's things that we look around and you can clearly see visually. I know you walk around, Mr. Brinkmeyer, and you can see things. Montgomery Road, just up the hill from BP. I can't think of the address right now, but it sold under auction last year. It looks like it's ready to fall down. It's up on the
It's
hill.
getting torn down.
Getting torn down
I
in 4
just
weeks.
turned the
They turned in permit
demo
today.
in. So it's getting torn
Okay,
down.
see? There's their answers. Things to be transparent about like that, because I've gotten so many calls about that one.
I will just say, Mr. Tracy, I did call about that myself, and I was told.
James is
that-
in our office all the time asking about properties. He gets answers all
Well,
the time.
that's awesome. I work, I go to school, I have 2 jobs.
Thank you, let me talk.
So, I
Thank you,
mean,
Mr. Brinkmeyer.
I think the other one would be the old bingo place on Montgomery Road we're looking at, Perry and Derrick. These are things that are visually obvious to look at as to blight and nuisance. It's not just always a call, it's something that you drive down the street and see.
Right. Perry and Derrick is the one with the fugitive from justice, who's the only person who could possibly be the owner. We're not even sure he really is, because that title was passed around from one shady group to another. And my experience has been, when I was on council and I would get calls, would be to call, well, let me call the building department, let me call the health department, let me see what's going on, and I would find out, oh, we didn't know about that, or, yeah, we did cite that, and this is what's going on, they find out what it, or that's currently going through probate, there is nobody to hold responsible for it, and that has been my experience, and that has been the most productive thing when somebody called me, and I occasionally get them now, but that's been the most productive. And at that point, well, we've tried this, we're not getting a response, that's the time then I think to, okay, let's try the health department. What do they have on it? What do the police? What else can we bring in? But that has been the successful approach when I was on council.
Yeah, and I
That's the way to
definitely-
find out the
I
best about
definitely
what's
hear
going
you
on.
on that, and I've done that. I think at the health department, they know me by voice when I
Yeah.
call in now. Like I said, I've talked to Mr. Roble a couple times on the phone. I think I've even spoken to Mr. Brinkmeyer on the phone. I've showed up in there several times doing just that. And I'm not saying that that's ineffective. I'm just saying it's simply not as effective as if we can get this thing figured out and have a little bit more teeth to it to where we can get the civil penalties thing going in. But I mean, I'm starting to feel like, that's not the goal, the shared goal by all in this room, and that's fine. How do we get there is my question. What do we need to
It is
do?
a shared goal. The problem is the code. First of all, you need to fix the ordinance with the law department. Totally fix it. Then we find a way to, this data. This gentleman has a complaint of 1844 Mills.
848.
Okay, then have we been down there? We don't know. As a resident, there's only 7 policemen that still live here. As a resident, I know what my neighborhood looks like. I've lived there 46 years. Not all of it is a nuisance. I might not like it, but you call your complaint in and let them look at it and find out, is it a nuisance? Is it health? Is it building?
Okay,
For 15 years, I've dealt with 1848. Mr. Kramer can attest to this, I'm sure. We've had heroin addicts there. I was in Australia in 2001, and I don't know who that fighter was. It used to be around Cincinnati, the black fighter. They were all up there shooting heroin, set the place on fire, burned all the siding off my house. That was in 2001. I've had drugs. I've had fentanyl packages in the front yard. We got kids over there.
If the drug unit was called, I guarantee you.
Oh, they were. They
would
did. They did a major sweep there one night. But it's going on again. And I've called dozens of times. They pull up in my driveway and do their drug deals with the people next door. The front porch on that house has got boards sticking straight up in the air where they're broken. The porch is falling away from the house. I made a bunch of calls for a chimney that was dropping bricks in my driveway. I
That
got
got taken care of.
You did.
That got taken by us.
You did.
By us.
Okay.
Dozens of calls. Finally, I called my attorney and I said, you need to call the city of Norwood and address that. Now, he's got money on retainer. When he does something for me, if he charges me, he just takes it out of there. I don't know if he got through to you guys, but he was set to send a letter, and it did get taken care of.
Before he called us, that was already in the process of being fixed.
Okay.
That
So now
chimney-
it's state-owned, and who
that chimney
owns the
was-
Well, okay, the owner of that house lives in Finland and doesn't give a rat's ass what happens in the city of
If we
Norwood.
collate all that data, until we get a system that does, they're handling it, they're handling it, they're handling it.
So we
They
need.
don't talk to each other
So instead
about
of
it.
waiting for this guy so much, we need to go and look at a third-party system that we can get. Maybe that warrants 11 grand is probably gonna be valuable. Let's
I
look
was
into
there,
that,
he
please.
could
Can we get that information sent to us so we can kind of look into that too?
There is
See if that's good,
like
write that
back door.
down. So we need, some definitions of things from you guys' departments, some verbiage, because we don't know everything.
I
That's what we
think
need.
you've got a lot of it, you just set the bar too high.
Then maybe we need to look at that as far as the limits.
But
Is what
that
I'm
would be
saying.
through the law department.
What's your definition of set the bar, set the?
Let's talk about the numbers.
Yeah.
The number.
Okay.
It's like
and
last time,
that's-
that's what they're saying,
and
is
that's-
they can
that's what
never
we
even
did.
get there.
But the problem is that we're not expecting, we can kind of throw a number and say, this is pretty good. I mean, like I said, we went back and forth with Mr. Waggle. I can say 9, 10 times on these numbers to try and get a happy medium between us and him.
And the reason we did that is he does have one of the biggest units in Norwood, one of the biggest rental property in Norwood, so that's why we did communicate with him on that item several times.
Can I have a couple minutes since I've been mentioned twice?
As soon as we get ready to finish up, I'll let you. I want Chief Kramer to kind of get his comments because he's been waiting for at least 20 minutes.
No, I would, well, I think anybody giving, it's just kind of throwing numbers. It's kind of a guessing game. So I don't necessarily think the numbers are necessarily wrong. I mean, I think it's just, I don't know how you come up with a good number, but just a suggestion would be to, if you want a little bit more from the Health and Building Department, whether we have another meeting or you just ask them to email you that. In the meantime, we can take some of these addresses that you guys have and we can get together as a group, because we do have an ordinance right now, and see if what we have rises to the level. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but we can report back to you after, like I run it through the CAD and they check on their records, and we can move forward in that direction and you know.
I think that would be great. That would be amazing. And then, and to save everybody from having another meeting unless we have to, I think getting a hold of the building department, getting a hold of the health department ourselves offline, and just trying to get some of that verbiage from them and kind of get an essence of that. So then we can get with Keith Moore and Tim Gary and try to put this thing together. Maybe even have a meeting with just us about the limits and some of the items that we did get, and I think go from there.
So, as far as the building department, I'd like to see verbiage on what a quote-unquote call for service would be. So,
What's a what,
a
please?
call for service, or,
So like anytime you guys gotta go out and give a notice, is that what you guys want to be called?
as far as the docking it for 1, 2, 3, as far as the chronic nuisance number. If you go out and you give a letter of warning to somebody and say, hey, I need chip paint fixed, porch falling down, stairs unsafe, and you write up a warning letter saying, hey, you have 30 days to repair this. is that going to count for you guys as far as one?
See, I don't think that stuff, I think it's the same landlords, to me.
And that's
I
what
don't
we're
think,
trying
because,
to
you know,
that's what
you
we're
got a
trying to beat.
refrigerator. If we say a refrigerator, when we go, we'll go right up, say, get rid of the refrigerator, and they'll get rid of it. But I think our problem is, it's the same owners, it's the same, but under your ordinance, they don't fall under it at all.
Because we
But-
don't have anything for you.
Right.
That's what we need from you
But if we
guys.
make it where we're going back and it's really the owner not taking care of their place instead of the tenant destroying the place and that, yeah, if it's owner's not taking care of it, it keeps coming back, we keep going back, yeah, we can figure out a number, how many times for that. But to me, that's about the only,
Well, I think and I agree with what you're saying, I really like that. And I think what Mr. Race is trying to say is, so you go out and give, first notice, and the second notice, and final notice, right? And then they
so
decide
are we
mail
just gonna
court.
get rid of what we're doing now to do this?
No.
You're gonna keep doing that. What we're saying is, so you get 6 calls in 6 months or 6 dings in 6 months. Is that first notice a ding, or is it, you get to a final notice and you get a ding? That's what we kind of want. What would make more sense for your department to go into this ordinance and the definition?
And what's going to fit from your department into this
Yeah,
ordinance?
but that's about for an owner to keep going, you go back, and every time you hear it, you go like that.
And that's
But-
what we're trying to stop with this
Yeah.
ordinance, because
Yeah.
if you look, the fines are pretty steep. I think, let's see, $3,000 fine once you get up past your max number. So you keep hitting, let's say Mr. Waggle's property ends up hitting 16, he gets that $3,000 fine, and then he hits 17, that's another 3,000. He hits 18, that's another 3,000. These owners are going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, wait a minute. There's a whole lot of money at stake right now. This ordinance was meant to be that I better take care of my property because I don't have that money to spend. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'd much rather spend something less than spend something more on my fines. So that's the whole reason that we want.
Well, maybe I'll look other cities or something, and see if they got something like that.
That would be very much appreciated, and we can communicate through email or by phone.
But that's about the only thing that I could see for us.
Yeah.
And that's the same people, you go, that's your fault, you should be fixing it.
Yeah.
Property maintenance issues are not nuisance activities under this. So whatever they're citing for, unless it's trash or junk vehicles, and I think the health department does the junk vehicles.
Well, they do
Right, but
trash
for the
and junk,
trash, but
yeah.
the building department will write for trash, but there's nothing else building department related in this.
So that's what we're saying we need to add in. We need to find out what we should add in and add it in, is what we're saying.
So they want to know what parts of the, property maintenance and building
That's what I was
codes
saying about
you
the
should
owners.
include.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that would be
I'll
very
look-
beneficial.
But other than that, that's about the only
Because
thing.
if I went through and I added everything, and it comes down to Mr. Moore saying, hey, look, 12 of these 20 items you added, we can't work in here. Then I've got egg on my face. I'd much rather hear it from you guys as to what can I put in. And Mr. Moore knows probably what can go in there as well. But you guys know better than I do what can go in here, what can fit into this ordinance under the building department.
And another thing we need to figure out too, is what I was trying to say is, because I think you guys do the final notice and then mayor's court citation too, right? Correct? So do we, each notice is a different call that goes towards your limit 6 months? Or do we say, if you don't get that final notice, you miss that deadline, you decide the mayor's court, is that just one towards your amount for the 6 months? That's something we can figure out. I don't know if it's for you guys, maybe you guys get a recommendation, and us going through Keith Moore Law Department on that one maybe. But that's something we gotta figure out as well, so if you can give a recommendation on that, that would be very helpful as well.
And again, that's, when you look through this ordinance, figure out how these notices are gonna work and fit with this ordinance. If one green grass letter or grass notice is going to be one check on that ordinance, and then the next one is a second, and the third one, the final notice is a third. That's how and that's how you guys want to do it,
The
that's fine.
issue I see with the tall grass is
However-
we already have the corrective action built in by turning it over to another department to be corrected. So I see an issue with tall grass because we've already put in place a department to mow the grass. They may not have time to get to it, but
But
I think when you
if you,
get to the point of adding it into a nuisance.
if you've written that notice, right? That's one ding. You've written the second notice, that's 2 dings. You've written the third notice, that's 3 dings. And you've now put it over to the maintenance department to mow the grass. Those dings are still sitting there, whether or not that's our department going over to mow
But
it.
but it's just like the junk car. When the junk car is taken off the lot, it's corrected, and then we're still using that against a property owner for enforcement. And I think
When you abate the problem, it no longer counts.
that's going to be one of
That's
the,
already in there.
that's,
It's in there.
all right.
That means, time out. So if they abate the problem, that thing goes away.
Correct.
We were kind of thinking your ordinance said, if you went out there 4 different times, that's causes a red flag.
So,
There's 4 different instances. So say we're saying,
That's why I think Brian was
Well,
thinking the same thing I'm thinking.
look, say we're saying like you guys go out there and this guy's gutter's falling off and there's a raccoon living in it, stuff's falling in a neighbor's yard and that's a big deal. And they're calling you, right? We need to figure out one, when you go out there and give that first notice, is that a ding towards that property? Or do we get it to the point where it's all right, final notice, you ain't fixing it, you're going to mayor's court, that's the one ding towards the property. That's a hurdle we gotta figure out, 1. 2, once they get that figured out and they get the problem abated, then that would come off of their property.
Because we were kind of thinking it was 4 different trips to the same place for 4 different items.
No.
No.
Nope.
No.
Because again, if you go out and you say, you guys write up garbage, right? You guys go out, you write up garbage, you've got a notice for garbage, all of a sudden, health department goes out because of tall grass, either you guys saw it or another person called it in, said there's tall grass here, they go out and write the tall grass up, and let's say that one trip out there with documentation of what happened is now one between you and him, that's 2 violations there. All of a sudden, let's say 20 days down the road, Chief Kramer's guys get called over there for a fight, okay? And they know that the occupants of this house are part of that fight. That's ding number 3. If this is a single-family house,
They're already over halfway to there. 4 and 6 months.
if this is a single-family house, we've already got 3 within 6 months.
Yes, but if they.
Now, if they abate the grass,
It's all done.
Then that falls off.
then that falls off. Now they're only halfway there.
but see, should it fall off though? I mean, I guess that's what, I
Well,
don't,
that's something we gotta talk about. So if we
Do we
go,
want it to fall
each
off?
notice is a new ding, but you get the mayor's court, maybe it doesn't fall off at that point, if you got all the way to that point.
I mean, I don't know.
That's what we're looking for this guidance for, in my viewpoint of, hey, this is how we work. This is
what
what
I'm-
my opinion would be.
My point is, I'm trying to say if a property owner, whether we did it for them or they did it, I think you're going to have problems with enforcement action.
If we do it for them, it's not gonna fall off. That's ridiculous. But if they get out there and they go fix it and they get it done, then it should fall off. That's how the ordinance reads. You abate the problem, it falls off.
I mean, I don't exactly know where it says that in the ordinance, on that your specific point there. To me, it's like, once you start, I mean, I don't think there should be no negatives. Like, if you hit things that cause you to, have an abatement act, or have a nuisance activity, I think it's gonna be way too complicated. They have to start adding and subtracting on it, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
it's the
maybe
point that-
something that they can kind of help us with and say, hey, we think they should stay on there, or whatever. And we can adjust. That's what we're trying to figure out here, is what is the guidance from these departments that are ultimately going to be on this task force to enforce this thing. How do they want to see it enforced? That's what we're looking for.
Have any of you guys ever left Norwood?
Mr. Weigel, do you want to go ahead and say your comments
Yeah, I
now?
think it's a good time.
they have a little different tone or different thought process.
Sir,
We had a
Just one
building in
microphone.
Norwood,
Yeah.
in the city, and I had a problem with too many police calls under their first law. I think they changed it and added, but it was 59 units. And I certainly have no problem at all with building department or health department because you're giving me a chance to fix them. But when you're putting things out of my control, which sadly is what happens when the police, you guys use the example of a car in the parking lot with music. When you have a 29-unit building, you're going to get those calls, and they are a nuisance. I hope you would take that person and throw them in jail. And I know that's not that simple and easy either, but when you hold me responsible for all those calls, and those can add up in a bigger building relatively fast. And that's, if you want to change the system for the building department, I think it's bullcrap. If the gutter's falling off, you get a couple warnings, you ought to be, especially if you have other issues combined with it. But when you take issues that aren't me, and really they've done a good job here, and I'm in favor of this. Obviously it's one thing if I can evict them. If you tell me it's apartment 7 and they've had calls for loud music, I will evict them. I will abate the problem. We have no issues. I would do that no matter what. That's how I run my business. But sometimes when it's someone in the parking lot and I don't have an apartment number, I don't have any way of, people run through the hallways, knocking on doors, and the police have gotten called. Those calls can add up in a bigger building where there's 29 residences. This isn't one house, one person. So that's why I'm scared to raise the numbers.
But part of the big issue is people calling. Sometimes the person calling is as wrong as the person doing the act, and it's a misdemeanor, minor misdemeanor, not occurring within our purview, and you get there and nobody wants to do nothing,
Yep.
but people are complaining. I get that. They get there and the music turned down the minute they see the marked car. We don't have a lot of unmarked cars that run to send an unmarked car. You catch them. But I don't want to get involved. Not me.
I agree.
Yeah. So.
But that's what makes me nervous. That is part of the number of calls.
Right.
If they're just called, not a conviction. Yeah.
But as far as, that is an issue, I understand that. But all these other issues, people, did they call? Gentlemen with bills, they dealt with it. I'll get a hold of Sergeant Lewis and we'll find out what they can do with the drug stuff.
If it's a felony conviction or it's a gutter falling off and the owners aren't taking care of it, they need to be held accountable.
Guy around the corner from me on South Jefferson been playing that game. He puts up something, stops, puts up something else, stops, and the lady across the street's painting and beautifying her house. And this guy, he's doing nothing. Now maybe he doesn't own it, or maybe the owner's, I don't care. But I don't have to look at his property, so I don't consider that a nuisance.
Well, I'm not here to decide whether that's a
I know.
nuisance. I just feel like that guy is given more of a chance, and I get nervous about a bigger building when it comes to the police calls because I can't control them.
Right.
And I don't know what to do.
Well spoken, I agree with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but,
Thank you for your-
and like we put in here, we put in things that help with you as far as slowing this down for you.
Absolutely.
As far as, sending a letter and saying, hey, I'm working on here's my plan of abatement. Here's what I need to do. Here's how much time I need. We've put that in there to help people like you who might have hit this mark more than once in 6 months, So.
I think it might be worth notability too, if we're gonna be working with the building department, they're giving the citations or their notices. And I think that's something we won't around put it, and maybe, when the police go out, there's a citation or a warning given, so if there's a paper trail, there is an actual, there's a name of somebody, there is, their address, whatever, and it would be more
Right,
trackable.
but like I said, that when we first started this, when the police show up, a lot of times they don't live in that building. I don't live here. No, man.
And they won't tell them where they live. And I feel that's a hard
I live
job.
at 123 Walnut Street, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the cops roll away, where are they going? Into that building where they live. So that's a lot of times as far as the police department's concerned that you won't always get the right address. And Mr. Waggle's back there. He knows. He's probably seen it before.
Oh, tons of time. And they'll lie to me too, and only hope if it's my manager
But-
right there.
That's something where if he goes and talks with the police department and realizes that somebody got a call up there, he probably has a good idea of who it was. If he knows his building as well as I think he does.
If I can find out.
I think we have some good stuff here.
Thank you.
Eventually, even though we kind of had almost like, fight about it a little bit. I think we can reach out to the building department and get their insight and opinions, reach out to the health department, get theirs.
Would you want to work with the building department? I'll work with Mr. Williamson or somebody from the health department.
I'll work with the building department, you work with the health department. James, you want to maybe look into some of this software with Mr. Murphy and just kind of see what's going on there and.
Yeah, because there's two things. Fix the ordinance in correlation with data, but everybody can, whether info to a bucket, we can sort and by name, by address, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have that, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and then when I get my stuff from the building department, the health department, software, stuff like that, maybe you don't really need to take it up to the law department, then we can funnel that to Keith Moore, and then we can work from there, and we can maybe meet again as a committee without having to drag them here again. And now we're working on, amending the ordinance.
And I think as far as from the police side, the only thing that I'm looking to add, and I'll get his opinion, is the keeping and occupying frequently disorderly house. So Mr. Moore's ordinance of the disorderly house to throw into this as part of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they use that a lot as far as Xavier, and they can start dinging, using that
We
on
had much
this.
trouble with Xavier houses this year, the keg parties and whatever.
Not that I'm aware of, not that I've seen.
It sounds like we got a plan. Are we all in agreement somewhat with that little plan?
You guys, I've got this address to look at. If you want to send me any more that you have, I can get with the rest of these guys and I'll run it on my end.
I'm going to meet with somebody who couldn't make it tonight as far as, I think it's 3 or 4 drug houses up on Ward 4. I just couldn't meet up with him yesterday, and
Well, just email me whatever addresses you have.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think there's a resident that wanted to speak. Did you want to?
and administrators, you are free to go. If you want to go, you can go. We'll let the
Thank you.
Well, I got a couple. Director Murphy, spoke with you about 3 or 4 years ago, and if I heard it right, I remember you said that somebody had a problem with a property that was handled in 40 days. That's something, I think you said something about some property that a city council member
That was-
lived next to, it was
yeah.
settled in 40 days.
that was myself.
Okay, well, where I lived, I've been dealing with it for 5 years.
Is it property
It is, sure the hell is, and I've called, and I haven't enough talked to him. I've talked to Gary probably at least once a week of this. Shelby once a week. Dale Marshall once a week. And it is total bullshit. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. 1911 Crown. I am fed up,
Not on my street.
really fed up. I've called everybody I could, and I'm tired of hearing about due process. If anybody here or anybody of importance lived next to that, it still wouldn't be a problem that it is now. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I've been subpoenaed to court with pictures I have of her property, I got video of her taking water in her backyard from these nasty stagnant water things, put it in, and then she cleans up. There's mosquitoes all over. It is an absolute joke.
Classic example of
Okay,
everything gone wrong.
now, I call Jim Shelby, he comes up and says, Jim, you can park in my driveway, come up. He comes sit in my backyard, I got a nice fire pit, it's really nice back there. He came back, and it wasn't a minute later, he's like, oh yeah, I had 5 mosquitoes on my shin. I cannot enjoy my backyard, I can't enjoy my front porch. When I pull in, when I leave for work in the morning, come home at night, it's the same freaking smell. There's rodents in her backyard. I got pictures of holes in her backyard. It seems like there's nothing getting done. And I stopped over and talked to Dale Marshall like 3 years ago, and I think you were there, and that's when I first met you, and you're like, call. Well, hey, I've been calling, okay?
She is in the system.
She's in the system. We had a restraining order against her, okay? She went to the Supreme Court of Ohio, and they denied it. She's got all these motions that, she's denying it. We go down to court for this restraining order, and where we go to file, we tell the lady who it is. Oh yeah, she's a freaking flyer down here. I mean, this is an absolute joke. And like I said, I'm talking to Tim Gary at least once a week. And Mr. Moore, I'm beside myself. And from illegal, I don't know what to do. When she had a for sale or a garage sale sign, she's not allowed to have, she's not have a permit for it. Okay? So
I think you found out about that, and then you sent an officer down.
Yeah.
He came down and told her she had to remove the signs. She says, "Get out of here, bitch." She told the police officer that. Okay, and I was there putting a bike rack in my driveway.
At least you didn't assault that one.
Okay, well, that's true. I wish she would have. I mean, no offense to the officer who got assaulted, but, look what happened last time. Okay? But I'm telling you, if anybody of importance lived next to her, I mean, you can't have kids out, and then the guy on the other side of her, he's the football coach for the city, and
We had a
he can't take
similar
his
issue
kids.
with the Mucker Heidi house up in the north end when I was working. The only way we got it cleaned up, she called the squad on herself. And we all knew the house. Fire inspector got, and the fireman went in and forgot to close the door tight. And he could see, instantly rode up, she was taken out. The house was cleaned out and torn down, and she died on the way to Longview.
Well,
This one is COVID, got court canceled. They don't want it.
but that was 2 years ago, but it's been going on for 5 years. I mean, she's had 2 properties taken from her.
Yeah.
One was taken because she was in jail for assaulting an officer. But now, what are we doing about 1911 Crown? What are we doing? Thursday, Gary went to court for something about it. Now we go to court on the 20th, which is next Monday.
Right.
Now, I don't know if I'll be subpoenaed again, but he said, just hold on, I'll call you if needed. Well, thank God I didn't have to go down, or I think I didn't go down. He told me that because I would have went down, and this got, prolonged again because 4 judges have recused themselves now for the county. This is bullshit, man.
She can't deal with it, he's gonna stay.
If Berkowitz is going to have to stay. I mean, I'm sorry, I am done with this, man. And then you
the court
guys-
has to make a ruling on her to do something with her.
And then she had her, 4 years ago, Judge Burchard ordered her yard to be cleared out. So they brought a dumpster down and cleaned the son of a bitch up. And it was a year later, and it was still back up. And Dale Marshall, he's retired, but he got subpoenaed too. And here we go, what's going on? And then when he told me that I guess exactly, I don't know if you're sure that about the lawyers, she couldn't get a public defender because it was through the city of Norwood, that the county couldn't appoint her a lawyer, so that's where we're at now.
She's got one, and apparently he's actually going to try the case instead of just sitting there and watching her do it. So that's the last we heard from him anyway.
So, September 20th, next Monday comes, and it gets continued again, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I'm not gonna, and I like the city of Norwood, but god damn, this is bad, guys. And if you guys live there, or you want, and I've never spoken with these guys before. No one's ever told me to call the building department on a residential area. I didn't know, I would have blown your phone up. Trust me. I've never met you at anybody building. It's always Jim Shelby, Dale Marshall, now Tim Gary.
It's pretty much the house.
Well, Dale's taking care of it. We talked, and that Dale's taking, so we, but Dale's going down there to testify.
Yeah, because he was subpoenaed too. Now, I was on a conference call with him and Gary,
Yeah.
and that's when they told me about the whole lawyer situation. It got continued again.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I don't
She's.
understand that decision.
Somebody's in her back. She knows the law a little bit better than I think she knows, or we think she
She's
knows.
brilliant.
But because she's down there all the time. But still, if you can't have this in your property and she still has it for 3 years, why? Why is it still allowed?
Well, once this case is done, then we'll move on to, but we want to get through this criminal case first. And then there are some other steps we want to take, but you don't want to interrupt one to do the other.
Well, that's what Gary told-
We want to actually get this stupid thing taken.
And he said they don't want to do both at the same time because the judge might throw one
On
out.
this case, this one case for 18 months.
Oh, and I've lived next to her for 5 years.
No, I understand. I totally understand. It's been the most frustrating. You should hear Tim talk about it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't.
It's not recommended. Madeira had the boys out there. And they went away for a weekend. And all the neighbors waited, cleaned the whole place up, hauled the crap away, painted the house. They came back, nobody saw nothing. Nobody didn't.
Dale Marshall told me that
You don't
story.
wanna do that.
No.
But-
Well, I wouldn't tell you if I did.
Settled, it'll
But-
be done.
And I just wish you guys, like I said, if you live next to that, and it's for it to be allowed, and I got a video, because I have a camera on my fucking driveway, and every week, she brings more shit in on her car. She's not, and then she'll call the police, whatever, like, they're deterring me by parking in, no, I'm deterred by parking one of our cars in front of your house, so you don't bring this shit in. But every week, she still brings stuff in. She's still doing it.
Dale caught her doing on Norwood Avenue. When she saw him taking his picture, she flipped the bird off to him and kept on doing it.
Last Wednesday, she was in Starbucks by XU in their dumpster. She was in the dumpster and XU cops were there.
You know, now, next time we go to court, I don't know if we can get a file of all the times that police have been called for 1911. I sure want to get all the fire department calls, because I have a fire in my backyard, and everything's legal. I mean, I had the assistant chief come out and say, everything looks fine. And then 2 weeks ago, I went up to the fire department, knocked the door, hey guys, this is Sean, 1911 Crown, or 1907 Crown, let you know I'm burning tonight. Okay? 2 hours later, here comes the fire department. Full gear, truck and all. And I guess by law they have to, but then what, couldn't they just send a car down? And say, oh, that's my, because that's what it is. I get a fire and she just call, just a call. Now, can't she get charged just like an ambulance call?
They're calling the county and the county has to dispatch.
But I'm saying, no, for calling, when the fire department comes in, you can look at the fire department reports. Oh, here's a call of open fire, nothing's wrong. Next Saturday, or open fire, nothing's wrong.
Well, and that's something that Mr. Moore can look into as far as the misuse of 911.
And that's exactly what's happening.
And that's,
I mean, and then like, he told me call, and man, I've been calling. I'm just so sick of calling.
I think we're going to adjourn this meeting for tonight. I appreciate everybody coming out. If you want to discuss, I'll hang out for a little bit.
When's the next one?
We'll let you know.